who will be talking about life transitions and losses. Cheryl was born and raised in Winnipeg. Her first line of study was natural sciences. She relocated to Alberta when she completed her Master of Divinity degree at the Edmonton Baptist Seminary. For 10 years prior to attending an Anglican church, she attended a Pentecostal church and was ordained with the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. For 15 years after that, she ran a ministry that sought to bring healing to folks dealing with mental health issues. When the ministry closed, she worked in a private practice counseling. For over 30 years, both personally and professionally, she has dealt with the realities of change, grief, trauma, and hopes today we can find good, godly paths through these difficult times. Cheryl is married to David and has 2 stepchildren and 6 grandchildren. Cheryl is now retired, and we are thankful she is still willing to step forward and help others. Please welcome Cheryl Shea Beatty.
Thanks, Mark. Is that good? I'm going to take this out. Lots of noise. So we are dealing with some difficult things today, and I thought we should open with a prayer. The Serenity Prayer. There's copies on the table there. But what I would ask you to do is, if you don't have copies, put your hand up. There's probably extras somewhere. Has everyone got a copy? So what I'd like to do is actually just have you close your eyes and chill. Just calm down a bit. Take a couple of deep breaths. And just listen as I read this. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that He will make all things right as I surrender to His will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with Him forever. Amen. Amen. Many of you will recognize the first 2 lines, maybe the first 4 lines, and the other one the Serenity's Prayer is used regularly by groups like Alcoholics Anonymous, as well as the theme of living one day at a time. So I thought it was appropriate. I think I'm getting a bit of feedback there. I thought it was appropriate when we're talking about our topic today, because it does. Oh, no, I'm gone. Are we back? Are we okay? Okay. Because it does have to do with transitions and change. So I'm going to take you back to the year 2020. Anyone remember the year 2020? So this was my year. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. So one day I was in my office in Edmonton seeing clients. And the next day I understood I was supposed to not be in my office seeing clients, which was quite okay because it was 6 floors up and the elevator was quite small and there was a couple of floors that were Alberta Health Services. So the elevator was like always crammed. So I was quite happy to work from home in many ways. But I also had to then figure out how to do this thing called Zooming, which I had never done before. And I am not the most computer literate person. And so that took a bit of a challenge, and then I had to figure out on top of all that, because I was working as a counselor, it had to be something that was secure. People couldn't tap into. So then there was all these discussion boards from counselors and psychologists. Well, you can't use this one. Yes, you can. No, you can't. It's not secure. So I had to figure all that out on my own. And then around that same time, my now husband and I decided it was time to get married. He was a little slow on that one, but anyways. So I was down here for 2 weeks and then up in Edmonton. And then, of course, I had to sell my house during COVID as well, which was another thing because there were certain things that realtors had to follow during a sale about people coming in and how many people and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was an interesting time. I thought, because of the area of town, I lived in a 1944 750 square foot bungalow. And it was cute. But it's amazing how people look at pictures, probably read it and say it's 750 square feet, and then come and look at the house and say, well, it's really quite small. Yeah. What do you think? 750 square feet. So it was a happy time, but it was an extremely stressful time. Part of the happy time was driving Highway 2 has never been so good as during those first few weeks of COVID. There was hardly any traffic. It was lovely. The house, however, didn't sell until 2 weeks before our planned wedding date, which was October 3rd. I would not have made it through the back and forth without a dear friend, Teresa, checking on my house, cleaning my house, and then the other kind of weird thing in there was I had because it was COVID, I couldn't get the people in the places where they come and pick up things for resale. I couldn't get them to come out and do that. So one day I thought, I'll just sell my couch, my bed, my kitchen table, those things that I know I don't need. I'll just sell them on Marketplace. And I thought, okay, it'll take a while to go out and do errands. People were like, click, click, click. It was all gone in like 2 hours. And then I stood in this empty house. So changes, the thing is that changes and transitions, even if they're totally positive, still have some stress involved in it. You might have heard the term eustress, EU stress, and that's actually stress that we have, but it's positive stress. So any kind of stress can be difficult to deal with at times. So what does this have to do with loss and grief? Well, one thing I've come to realize is that there's two types of change in our lives. There's change that we have a measure of control over, but you know what? There's a whole lot of change that we can do nothing about. And our tendency as human beings is that we want to be in control. We really desire to have that control. And that can be very healthy, but I think all of us have encountered super controlling people in our lives, and it's not really a pleasant relationship. So when we talk about loss and change and grief, a lot of times that is a situation where we have no control, or we have very little control. And sometimes we might not even have a control over our own emotions and our own self. So what do we do with that? I just share some of my grief experiences. The first real significant loss in my life was I was out here in Edmonton. The phone rang at 2 o'clock in the morning. Never a good sign when the phone rings at 2 o'clock in the morning. My sister was sobbing. This is 30 years ago now. To tell me that her husband had died from suicide. And I was a science-y girl then. I was a marketing manager for a testing lab. And the interesting thing, and this is important to know, that God prepares us. The weekend before this phone call, I had gone to a single adults seminar. All the courses about how to find a husband were taken, and I ended up in the grief seminar. I'm like, why? That's not what I wanted. God knew. God knew. And so I had some skills to deal with that. The next kind of major loss in my life was my mom's health decline and her ultimate death. And in that time, I learned this term called anticipatory grief. Has anyone heard that term? Some of you have, okay. So anticipatory grief is we're anticipating the death or the death of someone or the end of someone. So if you think of it outside of a death, It could be, oh, there's rumors, you're working in this company, you've been there for 15 years, but there's rumors about layoffs. You would have a form of anticipatory grief in there, wondering like, better check the bank, like, are the bills all paid? I better not spend any money, because who knows what's going to happen. So those are all other parts of anticipatory grief. So I'd come a long way since then and realized I needed to work through some of this before. And I went to see a grief counselor who was very helpful. And I also decided that I would do really good with it, really good anticipating my mom's passing. Like I would just really work at it well. So I did that, and then Mom died, and then it was like reset, go through all this grief again. And I was somewhat surprised that even though I knew this was coming, it was still a significant amount of grieving that I had to go through. And some of you may have experienced that, some of you it may have been different. But for me, it was a time where there was this new stage of grief and loss and change. And part of it was, I was still single. My sister was single at the time. No, she was married at the time. And that was our family. So there was this sense of really feeling alone and lost. And so when I went to pack to go back to Winnipeg for Mom's funeral, I said to my sister, oh, I have all these nice pictures of Mom. I'll bring them. So I had my suitcase. So I figured I'd be away for 2 weeks, so I took quite a bit. And I started putting these pictures of Mom in my suitcase, in the frames, because I thought we'll use them at the memorial service. And before I knew it, this suitcase was half full of pictures of Mom, in my 750 square foot home. Keep that in mind, right? So part of my anticipatory grief was finding these pictures, framing them, putting them up, about Mom and us, or whatever it was. And so I didn't keep all of those to take to Winnipeg, because I wouldn't have had room for clothes. But I took quite a few of them. And then when I came back, I put them all up. And then over that year and a half, some of them started to come down. And I mention that because when we talk about grief, we sometimes miss talking about mourning. Grief is the experience of losing someone. Mourning is the actions that we take to grieve. So for me, that was these pictures. That was putting these pictures up and then starting to take them down. Was part of my mourning. So remember, there's change in our control and out of control. I didn't have control over Mom's health. I didn't even, to some extent, have control whether or not I could be there or not. We weren't a family of many where I could say goodbye, I'm leaving for a month, someone else do things, and I was running the ministry at the time and I was the only real employee. So there was that sense of not really having control at all about things. Mourning as well can be allowing ourselves to have emotions. I've certainly had people in my office over the years where they have emotions, but sometimes they're stuck. So sometimes they're stuck in sorrow, sometimes they're stuck in anger. That's not uncommon. I just want to read to you here, I'll put this back up here. If you're looking, now are we okay? Yeah. If you're looking for a good author on grief, I recommend, okay, you can't hear me? I recommend Alan Wolfelt, A-L-A-N W-O-F-E-L-T. So this is a book on grief and trauma, but it had a good list of losses. These are all common life losses that if we don't process them, that becomes a problem. If we process our grief, as hard as it is, then we move through life fairly well. So we can lose people we love by separation, whether physical or emotional. Certainly we can be in close familiar relationships where the person is still there, but emotionally they're not there. Rejection, hostility and grudges are a form of loss. Illness with debilitating conditions, especially things like dementia and Alzheimer's, where we really do lose that person to some measure. Divorce, a relationship where we're abandoned or betrayed is a form of loss. Death, and for parents with kids at home, empty nest. Though for some parents with kids at home, they're very happy at that. Loss of pets. This was the year my mom died. So my mom died, my best friend's husband died, and then my dog died. All in the space of like 3 months. And it was like, just roll me into the corner and give me chocolate, please, because I don't know what else to do. Those of you with dogs get that. We can lose aspects of ourselves, so we can lose our sense of self-esteem because of something that maybe happened to us. We can lose our health, physical or mental abilities. We can lose a job, mentioned that earlier. We can lose control. So that could be either, say, through an addiction, through loss of health, or becoming a victim in a situation. We can lose our innocence. We can lose our security, financial problems. We can lose our reputation. We can struggle sometimes with our belief system, maybe not even losing it altogether, but as Mark mentioned, I had been within the Pentecostal church for quite a long time, and then I just really felt God calling me back to my roots, which was Anglicanism. And as much as I felt that positively, when I left, I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. It was hard. It was still a hard transition. And in the different stages of our lives as well, there's a sense of loss. So, you should have a handout that looks something like this.
Nope.
You don't, oh, right, I asked someone to pass them out, so he's going to pass them out.
This side.
Yeah, I'll have some.
Has everyone got one, or when they can share with someone? Yeah, there's two sides of it. We're going to be on this side. So there's been a lot of work psychologically done about grief since the 1980s. And often people will cite the 5 stages of grief, but really there's way more. Now these are like the emotions of grief. Now I have a really messy one of these that I've photocopied and give to my clients. I tried to pretty it up a bit, but I don't have, like I said, always the best computer skills. So I want you to imagine that these connecting lines are all one line. And to me, when I first saw this one, it was, oh wow, this is like kids that go snowboarding and go back and forth. Have you seen that on the TV? The big U. And they go back and forth and back and forth. And we tend to think of grief as being a straight line. And it is not. So this is that half pipe, I think it's called, where we start up at the first 4, loss, hurt, change. So those are the first places we go to. We go through shock, numbness, and denial, not necessarily in that order. Some people can get stuck there, and that's sort of why. And when I hear people say, oh, we don't want to have a memorial service or a funeral. They're not here anyways. Yeah, but you are. And that's for you. And I think many of you here will realize that. And part of that is getting us out of this top place. That we need those, again, that mourning, those things we do to help process our loss. And then the next category, which goes from emotional outbursts over to depression, are a mix of many different emotions we might feel. And again, we need ways to process those emotions. It might be crying and writing. It might be pictures on the wall. There's as many different things as there are people, because it's unique to each of us. And I think most of us here have experienced some kind of grief and loss. And I would just encourage you to think about what are those things that you would do. You know, would you visit my mother-in-law was 92 when she passed. She was still skiing till she was at Whistler, until she was 87. I had never skied in my life, so I thought that was quite amazing. She moved here to Red Deer, and she was in assisted living, or whatever it's called, where you get your meals and and still, you know, we convinced her to not drive her car, but otherwise she was pretty on the go. And then she developed breast cancer and died very quickly from that, which for an active lady like that was actually kind of a blessing. So my husband's family didn't want to do anything. So I said, let's get together one evening and look at pictures. So everyone brought these old pictures with my husband's mom and kids, and we went through those pictures and we told stories together and we grieved together. So we need to do something to mourn. Even if the people around you are saying, well, no, we don't want to do that. We need to do something to mourn. And then there's all these different emotions. Anger, fear. Searchings is, well, what do I do now? How do I deal with this now? What's life going to be without this significant person in my life? Disorganization, like you're disorganized because your brain is overloaded. So don't beat yourself up about that ever. Panic, again, you know, sometimes just because of being on your own when you haven't been, or you're the executor and now you got to take care of all this stuff you sort of didn't bother to look at before. Guilt, loneliness, and depression. Now, then we get to something called re-entry troubles, which is that we're sort of starting to come out of that grief, but then we only get so far and we maybe slip back over to fear. Maybe we slip back to anger. And then maybe we move ahead again. And we get into re-entry troubles again, and maybe we slip back again. And then eventually, varies with every situation, we get into a place where we start to develop new relationships, new strengths, new patterns, have some hope, feel affirmed. We start to help others, and we're starting to adjust to the loss of this person or our job or whatever it may be. And again, those things that we do, the mourning things we do, are the things that help us get through this grief. Now, if you can, some of you will have it on the opposite side. This is called a grief house. Both of these I got from colleagues of mine when I was in counseling, and they said, feel free to use it. So I want you to just take a minute and maybe think a bit about this. The foundation of our house that's going to help us mourn is what values govern your life. Now, those values can be shaken. I've seen it many times, depending on the situation of someone's death, whether it's sudden or expected, whether it's really violent or peaceful in some way. But it's important to know those things. What are the values that govern your life? Just take a moment, see if you can jot down some things there. So one of my values was I believe I'm a follower of Jesus. I believe he's got my life in his hands, even though sometimes I didn't always feel well carried. He has my life in his hands. That would be a value. A value would be friendship, love, that I had those things with this person and now it's gone, but I still value those things in life. I can find other people that I can connect with. And then moving up there, that little door, who do you let in? You don't have to let everyone into every part of your life. You need to let safe people in that you can trust. And often what we find when we go through these times of significant loss is people that we thought we could count on, we can't. And it's not always because they're being mean. Often it's they don't have the capacity to do it themselves. So even for us, it's important that we build that capacity so that people in our lives, we can be the ones that are able to be there to support them. Describe your grief journey, we can just leave that for now. Things that have helped you or can help you deal with change and grief: supportive people, do your best to eat healthy. We had chocolate though at my mom's memorial service. Well, she had chocolate, so we had chocolate. Yeah.
Chocolate's a berry.
Oh, right, yeah. So, eating relatively healthy, getting enough sleep. If you're someone that exercises regularly, as soon as you can, get back to that routine. Get back to those routines that have been things that have helped you. On the side there, things you want people to know, that's kind of like a flag. Is there something that we shouldn't expect that other people know what we're going through? So maybe there's people we need to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now. Can we just talk? Or would you mind if I just came over for coffee one afternoon? Or something like that. Can we go for a walk? Something like that. And on the other side, who supports you? You need to know the people, when we're going through a difficult time, that support you, that are there for you. Now, the tendency is we have about 2 to 5 really close people in our lives at any time, that we can talk to them about anything and everything, and we trust them. Those are generally people that we've had in our lives for a long time. Outside of that, those numbers get bigger in terms of the number of people, but they're not necessarily our most trusting people. But when we go through any kind of significant mourning, sometimes those inner circle people, for some reason, aren't able to be there for us, and so maybe some of those that broader base of friends are the people that come in and help us in that journey. But just have an idea of who your people are that are in your corner. As you move through mourning, what are the positive things that have come from this journey?
Sorry.
None, yes. Could be none. That can be a hard one, but sometimes there can be some positives there. How do you let off steam on the top that's a chimney? Who or what protects you? Not protects you in a sense that you're not that you're cloistered away, but is it your own boundaries, healthy boundaries that protect you? Do you have a friend that you can say help and they'll come and protect you and help you? And what are your hopes for the future? Now, obviously, right after someone's passed that we know, we're not going to fill this out, right? This is a process. But these are just some things to think about as we go through grief and change and mourning. There's lots of, I think we're all old enough to know that there's lots of loss and changes in our life. And the more we just, I guess, kind of accept that's how it is, then we're able to start doing these things that we need. Doesn't mean you don't cry once in a while. Doesn't mean it's not hard. But you can walk through this season. The valley of the shadow of death. It's not the valley of death. It's the valley of the shadow of death. It's almost like the aftermath of that. And He will carry us through that. Well, thank you.
Very short.
Bob has the mic for questions.
Bob has the mic for questions. Does anyone have any questions or comments they want to share?
Hi.
Okay, Mark. You're right here, so there you go.
We've been talking about some very difficult, heavy stuff. But as some of you realize, I've gone through a real transition this year. I've sold the house and decided to move into a senior residence. That was not easy. But the big things I had family help with. I talked through all those things, and you sold the house and got rid of all the stuff just about. But it was the little thing that really caught me, and I was really surprised, and it took me a while to deal with, was the drugstore that I had gone to since 1997. And I was thinking, why would I be driving all across the city yet to go to a drugstore when I had one across the road? But it took me 8 months to make that decision. So we have some pretty big losses in our life, but when you reach some of them can be little, and it can be a hard decision to make.
Yes, I get that. It's very good, Mark. Thank you. Yeah, it sometimes surprises us the things. The big things, if we're attentive, we go, yeah, we need to deal with these big things. And then those things, yeah. Oh, Bob will give you a mic.
I'm just wondering if mourning is the same word as processing. When you say we have to process things, is that the same as going through the steps of mourning?
Yes, so processing is the same as mourning, but mourning is particular to mourning someone's a death or a loss. Yeah. And mourning, I think, has for many people has more tangible items to do than processing. Because when I'm going through something, I can process it in my head, I can do some journaling. But mourning, there's tangible things that we need to deal with or express that mourning.
You're very right about having a real friend. I mourned my husband twice. He had dementia. And Margaret Rose lived opposite me at the time. I'd have a bad day and she'd say, how about a cup of tea? And I'd go over. Margaret wouldn't give me any advice. She would just let me ramble on. And then when he died, when I had to put him in a home, Margaret said, you're not doing that alone. So she came in, he took his suitcase and I took him in. And Chris was also amazing when he was dying. So thank you, Margaret. But you do need a really good friend when you're mourning.
Any other? Oh, yeah. I'll give you this one because it's right here.
When I look around, I
I see that many of us have gone through times of sorrow and grieving. I've been with St. Leonard's for 50 years plus, and I look around and I think, definitely I'm not alone. I have a church family. As most of you know, my husband died of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It is a horrible, horrible disease. And even though I was a nurse and I could look after him until the last 2 evenings of his life, it is a real journey. But I found that I did more of my grieving when he was still alive, because the finality of it was I knew he was going to die. My sister had come to be with me, but there was so many things that had to be done. We had to move from our house into a seniors complex. We had to be involved with all the process of getting ready for him to die. And my church family was so supportive. And I remember when you came over, Chris, you've been only here a month or two, and Alec Robertson brought you over to meet Dick. And again, you were so helpful with us in planning the service. And even the funeral service, it is a way of letting go because your friends and your family are there. But the next thing was, of course, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. That was another one. But again, I got over it, and I want to thank all the people here at St. Leonard's for the support and love that you've given me.
So one of the lessons I learned about grief, which really shocked me and really rocked my whole existence, is that when I lost my son, I learned the hard way that people grieve differently. It depends on the relationship that each one has had with the one that we have lost. And it really shocked me that my son, my remaining son, who I figured would be part of my family, really, like, he was so close to his brother, and it was just as if he needed somewhere to vent, and it came to me. And it's been 6 years, and I finally, well, first of all, my faith has brought me through this, and it took me a long time to give up the anger, give up the shock, that this was his reaction. And now I pray every day that he gets inner peace. And I'm starting to see him kind of softening a little bit more towards me, but it's been 6 years. And I think this is what we have to learn, is that there's no one size fits all for grief. It depends on the person, it depends on the circumstances, the relationship, but that is a lesson that it was hard to learn. But what it has helped me, first of all, it's brought me through and showed me that I'm a little bit stronger now. So when I meet with somebody, I can share my experience. I'm not alone, you're not alone, you're not going crazy, and it's not on you. So I just have to share that a grief comes and goes, like you said, Cheryl. It could be a song, it could be something, and it can come back. But just knowing that I have just felt it just made me a little bit stronger. So the next time something happens, I may be a little bit more prepared.
Maybe, yeah.
Two really quick questions. Can you get the name and book number? Is that on? Not on.
No, you gotta be close.
Can you give me the name and author of the book you referenced?
Oh, yeah.
And also, what other books are available out there on grief, not around death?
I'm not giving you this book.
Okay,
That's
thank
easy.
you. Good call, not giving you this book.
Yeah, the author's Ellen Wolfelt. There's lots. It's dead. Why do we see? It's not just you, Grace.
Great.
You
you feel
For
ridiculous.
those of you that don't go to church here.
Grace touched it once.
You're always so helpful.
Oh, I tell you, trouble. Oh, my.
Hello? Okay. If you just go online and do an online search, there is tons of stuff written on grief and all different kinds of grief now. I just find Ellen Wolfelt very, knows his stuff and also has a good sense of humor. That's what I would add in there too.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time for maybe one more question?
Or comment? There you go.
Thank you. So I'm still looking at this one, and I assume most of us are believers of God, especially Jesus Christ. But the first 3 points that you said, like lost but or the change is a beginning point. But as Christians, I heard so many people, and I myself went through, the first question will be, why God? So is there any way in your experience, or it's process of mourning or processing the grief and all that, but I saw most of the people stuck there, and it's not easy to get over that and say, okay, happened is happened, I have a church family, I have people in my life that can support me, right? And not many of us can do that. In that kind of situation is when it gets hard, how to approach those people and get the word to them. So as a church-going person, what will be a good, easiest way to reach out to those kind of people and say, hey, yeah, still there is hope, you know?
Yeah.
So if they're half church going, I would tell them to read the Psalms and not the good Psalms. I think the term is imprecatory Psalms, where in one of them the Israelites are in Babylon and they're like, I wish we're just gonna bash their babies' heads on the rocks. Like, because the why God is actually about anger, about life not going how we wanted it to go. And so that's the part that we have to help them express that anger. Whether or not, and the Holy Spirit is quite capable of drawing people to the Lord. But help them deal with that anger, because that's what really that is about. And to just even name it as that, like I know you're blaming God for this, but I just see how angry you are. What other things are, like, what are you so angry? What's causing the anger? Oh, well, I'm all alone now, or whatever that is. Help them kind of connect in with that anger. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Going once?
Going once. Going twice? Oh, Chris.
I'm up.
Okay, right, sure.
Yeah.
So I do have one question about just like it feels like our culture in general has a hard time with grieving.
Yes.
And I remember doing some research when I was in university about Orthodox Jews and sort of the pattern that they have for grieving. Like they'll sit for a week in Shiva, and then they can't actually do anything around the funeral itself. It's all taken care of. You're not allowed, there's rules around when you come to someone who sits Shiva, you're supposed to not change the subject. You can't talk about the weather. You have to talk about either the person, or you have to ask how they're feeling, or memories about the person who died. And it feels like, in one way, those kinds of traditions can feel very restraining, but at the same time, it gives a permission, everybody knows how to behave. And it feels like in our culture, we have so many options that we don't know what we're doing. And so I deal with families sometimes who come for a funeral and they have no idea what to do, because they feel like they're restrained by the plethora of options that are out there. And so I'm just wondering if you could say something about kind of our cultural situation that we're in, and like how that helps or hinders our faith in terms of grieving. I guess hinders our grieving, I guess.
Hinders are grieving, yeah.
So yes, that's true. There you go. So I would say then, if you're interacting with people where they don't have some kind of community where they have a pattern of grieving, then just give them one. Say, hey, this would be helpful. why don't we just get some close friends together and we'll come over and have coffee, and I'll get some other people to bring some snacks and we'll just talk about how we're feeling about this person's passing. I mean, Grace deals with this now in your job. Do you want to mention something?
Well, I know I've had patients who didn't want funerals. I remember one specifically. The family decided, you know what, we're going to take the healthcare aides and the people that were important to that patient or that resident out for lunch. So they took them out for lunch, and we all shared stories of his funny escapades, and he had some really good ones. So, I mean, I think it's all about just being able to share memories. This life was important, this life was valuable, you know, and we were attached. And just to acknowledge the attachment and the value, and yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, just talk.
But what do you do if, like, for instance, my brother passed, and he didn't want anything, nothing, no memorial, nothing, and like you said, it's not for him, it's for us.
Yeah,
And so we're left hanging. So then what?
so you do something.
So you do something for you.
They don't,
But you don't want to, don't make it a formal memorial. Just say, you know what, we're going to get together and we're going to, like what Cheryl did, bring pictures. Or we're going to talk about them.
The thing is, like, he instilled that in his daughter, and so she doesn't want to have anything to do with it either, so it's just really sad.
Yeah.
That's really
And
hard.
we're all left hanging.
Yeah,
That's,
You want to respect his
Yes.
yeah. Yeah.
well,
He's not here anymore. Because when we're the ones left behind, we have to figure out a way to make it through. And there certainly has, and actually on the other side, my mom was the first of her, of the six to die at 82. Everyone else was like 90 something. So the youngest of my mom's siblings, when she died, I got a call from my cousin in Calgary. Would I come and just say something at the funeral, because I was here, all the other relatives are in Manitoba, and I said sure. And it was an Anglican, my Auntie Ruth was her name. She wanted an Anglican funeral. No one else there but me knew what the heck was going on. So that's the other side of it. If you're saying, please do a funeral, please let the minister that's doing it be able to do it in a way that's going to be meaningful for the people that are there. Okay? I think that's kind of important too. Yes, Rob?
We allowed to keep going here?
yeah, I guess.
I was at a funeral a little while ago, and I was talking to the funeral home guys, because I knew them. And I was just asking about the challenges since COVID of being a funeral home director and so on. And he actually said the biggest challenge that he has is just what we've been talking about, is people who, they don't want a funeral, or they don't have a clue. He said there's a whole generation now who didn't grow up in church. They don't know what a funeral is. So when he talked about we don't know how to grieve, they don't even know how to do a funeral, or what one is. And sometimes, so he's educating people, and he's saying, would you like this or that? They don't even know what the words mean.
Yeah.
So I think we have to acknowledge that for a lot of people in our world, this group is pretty educated, informed, and has good community and so on. Lots of people have nothing.
Yeah.
And so an event like this, I think, isn't just about how do I do this, but how do I help other people? Because you might think you know a little bit, but you know way more than your neighbors.
Yeah.
Edie and I have joked about, with babies being born, you have these birth doulas that kind of walk you through everything. Death doula would be a great occupation, because it's not just death, it's selling stuff, and it's the wills, and people don't have a clue. But we can all be death doulas for other people.
That's good. Okay, last one. Yeah.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Going back to the sort of cultural context of some of the cultural struggles we have now, just with something that I went through recently. One thing I don't think it's come up yet, but one thing I really realized going through a process of having 2 family members in the hospital at once and everything going on there is that you really have to watch your form of communication and the implications of that has. So like group text can be helpful in keeping everybody else informed, like medically what's going on and stuff, but does not cut it for some pieces, right? And so one thing that I found was when in a communication, my dander came up, you know, it was often because we were communicating something by text that needed to be a phone call or a Zoom meeting or something. And you just have to sort of stop and go, okay, let's not talk about this by text. Can we arrange a time to talk on the phone or whatever that looks like? And yeah, so with some family members in particular, every single time my dander got up and we were like at odds, all that needed to happen was a phone call and we were completely on the same page and cooperative, you know, but someone had to sort of identify that, okay, this is getting worse and it's escalating because it's text and there's no body language and there's no vocal tones and there's no compassion and it's not really two-way communication when you're texting. You know, you're just spouting off in a way. So anyway, I just thought I'd sort of point that out as something to keep in mind, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I have to come get my mic now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And my granddaughters that are almost 13, yeah, they just think texting is how you communicate. So I try to have conversations with them as much as possible. So yeah, and that's true. That here's the thing. They're in room da 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 da. Da-da-da, medications, da-da-da, that stuff by text. But anything emotional, you need to have some kind of face-to-face communication. And back to if someone has passed and someone in that family doesn't want to have a funeral, it's because they're scared of grieving and they don't know how to grieve. So again, try to help them with that. So we'll take a 5-minute quick break. Does that work? Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you very much.